My childhood friend betrayed me for popularity, but fame doesn't last forever. I was 10 when I met Kiara Meta, the loudest, most chaotic hurricane ever to crash into my quiet little life. Back then, everything felt smaller. The roads, the buildings, even my world. I lived in a calm neighborhood where every evening smelled like wet soil and mom's masala chai. I was a shy kid, the one who liked sitting by windows, sketching stick figures, and reading stories about people braver than me. Kiara was the exact opposite. She moved in next door one hot summer afternoon, a blur of energy, wearing a yellow frock, dragging a suitcase twice her size, and yelling at her mom because she wanted to carry her own stuff. She had this wild curly hair and a grin that could probably convince God himself to give her extra candy. The first time she saw me, I was sitting on the porch reading Percy Jackson. She stopped, stared, and said, "Do you like monsters?" I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded. She plopped down next to me like we'd known each other forever. "Cool. I like dragons. Want to be friends?" And just like that, no awkward introductions, no hesitation, she decided I was hers. Our friendship was strange, in the best way. Kiara talked, I listened. Kiara ran, I followed. She made chaos feel like an adventure. We'd spend afternoons building pillow forts in my living room. She'd declare herself Queen Kiara of Fort Piloa, and I'd be her loyal knight. She'd demand snacks as royal tax, and I'd pay in Parle G biscuits. She was fearless. Once, she climbed the mango tree behind our houses just to see if she could touch the clouds. I panicked because she was standing on a thin branch that looked like it was 2 seconds away from breaking. When she got down safely, she just laughed and said, "Arav, you worry too much. You need to live more." I remember blushing, not because of what she said, but because no one had ever said my name like that before. We grew up together, school uniforms, bus rides, endless lunchbox trades. I'd give her my aloo paratha. She'd give me her chocolate milk. She was the kind of person everyone noticed. Teachers adored her. Kids wanted to be near her. She could talk her way out of anything, once even convince our math teacher to cancel a surprise test by starting a conversation about cricket. I was fine being in her shadow. I liked watching her light up rooms. If she was the sun, I was content being the moon, reflecting just enough of her glow to feel warm. When we turned 12, she told me she wanted to be famous someday. We were sitting on my terrace, legs dangling over the ledge, eating popsicles that were melting too fast. "I don't know how," she said, "but I want people to know my name. I want to be someone." I remember smiling and saying, "You already are someone." She laughed. "Not like that. I mean famous, like in movies or something. Maybe I'll be an actress." "Then I'll write your lines," I said, half joking. She grinned and poked my shoulder. "You better. You're my person, Arav, my scriptwriter." That night, I wrote my first short story about a girl who could talk to the stars. I named her Kiara. By the time we hit 8th grade, we were practically siblings. Everyone knew about Arav and Kiara. Teachers paired us for every project. Our parents joked about us getting married one day, which made both of us roll our eyes but secretly blush. We didn't call it love, we were too young for that. But we loved each other in that pure, unspoken, "you're my safe place" kind of way. When she cried after getting a bad grade, I'd bring her Kit Kats. When I got bullied for being quiet, she'd stand in front of me like a storm ready to fight anyone. Once, during recess, some older kids started mocking me, calling me teacher's pet because I'd won a school writing contest. Kiara didn't even think twice. She poured her orange juice on one of their shoes and said, "Oops, my bad, slipped." Everyone laughed, not at me, but with her. Somehow, she turned the whole thing into a joke and the bullies backed off. That was Kiara, always loud, always fearless, always mine. But things started changing when high school began. It wasn't sudden, more like watching the sunset slowly, realizing it's getting darker, but not knowing exactly when it happened. We were 15 when we entered 9th grade. Suddenly, there were labels: popular kids, nerds, athletes, invisible ones. Kiara, of course, was noticed instantly. She joined the dance club, got featured in the school newsletter, and even got picked for the annual fest performance. I was happy for her. I really was. I'd sit in the audience during her practices, cheering, giving feedback when she asked. She'd smile and say, "You're my good luck charm." But I started noticing something else. People looked at her differently. They whispered her name in hallways. Boys tried to impress her. Girls envied her confidence. And me? I was just Arav, the same quiet guy with a notebook and a backpack full of dreams. One afternoon, we were walking home when a group of her new friends called out, "Hey Kiara, come with us. We're going to the cafe." She looked at me, then at them. I said, "Go ahead, I'll catch up later." She hesitated for a second, then smiled. "You sure?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And she ran toward them. It was the first time we didn't walk home together. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Maybe she's just busy. Maybe it's okay." Our conversation started shrinking. First, from hours to minutes, then to short texts, then to seen messages. At school, she sat with them now. They laughed louder, talked faster, and dressed like they were already in college. I couldn't keep up. One day, I found her sitting with her new group, practicing for a dance performance. I waited for her to notice me. She didn't. I walked up, smiling awkwardly. "Hey, you ready for English class?" One of the girls giggled and said, "Oh, it's your little friend." Kiara laughed. She laughed. Not the playful, familiar laugh I knew, but something sharper, like she was trying to fit in. That moment hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was betrayal, wrapped in silence. Later, she texted, "Sorry, you know how they are, don't take it seriously." I replied, "It's fine," but it wasn't. Over the next few months, I learned that friendships don't end in explosions, they fade, one missed hangout at a time. One "sorry, I'm busy" at a time. One unreturned smile at a time. Still, I didn't stop caring. I showed up for her. When she got picked for the talent show, I helped her write her intro speech. When she forgot her notes, I stayed up late typing them out for her. She'd thank me with a quick, "You're the best," and a heart emoji. I'd smile like that was enough. But the truth was, it wasn't. The day I realized something had truly changed was during the annual fest. Kiara was performing a dance number. The whole school was buzzing. I'd helped her rehearse for weeks, made her playlists, timed her transitions, even designed the banner for her team. When the performance ended, she won. Of course she did. The crowd screamed her name. She looked radiant, glowing under the spotlight, holding that trophy. For a second, her eyes scanned the crowd. I thought she'd look at me. She always did. But she didn't. She walked straight to her new friends, hugging them, crying, laughing, and when one of the guys put his arm around her shoulder, something inside me cracked. It wasn't jealousy, it was realization that I was no longer her person. After the show, I found her backstage. I wanted to congratulate her, maybe get one of those old smiles back, but she was surrounded by people, taking pictures, shouting, "We did it!" When she finally noticed me, she waved. "Hey, Arav," I smiled. "You are amazing," she grinned. "Thanks. Can you believe we won? Oh, we're going to the cafe to celebrate. You coming?" Before I could answer, one of the guys said, Kiara, it's just a team, right?" She hesitated, looked at me, then at them, then said, "Yeah, just a team. Sorry, Arav," and then she turned away. I walked home that night alone. The streets felt quieter than usual. Every step echoed with memories, pillow forts, mango trees, laughter, popsicles. I passed by her house. Her window lights were on. I could hear faint music from her room, probably the same song she danced to that night. I wanted to text her. I wanted to say, "I miss us," but instead I closed my phone and whispered, "Good night, Kiara." And maybe that was the first time I actually said goodbye, even though she wasn't there to hear it. High school had officially started. Kiara was now the star. And me, I was just part of her backstory, a quiet footnote in her rise to popularity. But still, every time I saw her walk down the hallway, surrounded by people who adored her, I couldn't help but think that used to be my best friend. And in that crowded, noisy corridor, watching her disappear into a sea of faces, I realized something painful yet simple. Forever isn't a promise. It's just a word we say when we're too young to understand that people change. High school was supposed to be a new beginning, a fresh chapter, but it quickly became the moment I realized just how fragile childhood bonds could be. Kiara had changed, not in the subtle, slow way that people naturally grow. No, she had transformed overnight. Or at least it felt that way to me. One day, she was the girl who climbed mango trees and laughed at my terrible jokes. The next, she was the girl everyone wanted to be around, the one teachers praised, the one who got invited to every club and every hangout. The sunlight in my quiet world had grown too bright for me to stand in. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe she just wanted to explore new friends. After all, I had my own life too, my books, my notebooks, my little dreams of writing stories that mattered. But I was too naive, too loyal to realize that loyalty without reciprocity could be poison. It all started with the school performance, the event that would mark the point of no return. Kiara was competing for the lead role in the annual cultural fest. She had rehearsed tirelessly, but I could tell she was nervous. Her hands shook, her brow furrowed, and she muttered her lines to herself over and over, like the world depended on her getting it right. I offered to help. As always, I stayed after school, writing speeches, timing pauses, editing her performance cues. I even gave up my own audition slot for a small monologue, one I had been rehearsing for months so she could have the stage all to herself. She protested at first, saying she couldn't accept it, but I told her, "Kiara, you're meant for this. Go shine. I'll be fine." She smiled at me, that warm, familiar smile, and for a brief moment, I felt that old trust, that bond we'd shared since we were 10. She wouldn't forget me. She couldn't. I was wrong. The day of the performance, I watched from the wings as she walked onto the stage. Her hair bounced, her costume glimmered, and she moved with a confidence I didn't recognize, and yet, it was hers. The crowd cheered as she spoke her lines, and I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about talent. It was about acceptance, about popularity, about being seen in a way I never was. When the final act ended, the applause thundered through the hall. Kiara beamed, holding the trophy for Best Performer. I wanted to step forward, to congratulate her, to remind her that we had done this together, that I had helped her reach this moment. But she didn't see me. Not really. Instead, she ran into the arms of her new friends, laughing and hugging them like I didn't exist. One of the boys sneered at me from the crowd. "Hey, look at the nerd," he said, still standing there like a loser. I froze. I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to disappear, melt into the floor and vanish, but my body refused. And then it happened. Kiara laughed. Not a little chuckle. Not the playful, teasing laugh that she used to share with me. This was different. It was sharp, effortless, cruel even. She glanced at me for a split second and then turned back to her friends, joining in their amusement. I don't remember walking home. I just remember the echo of her laughter following me, bouncing off every wall in the street like a cruel reminder that nothing was the same anymore. I confronted her later that day, hoping for some explanation, some shred of the person I had known. Kiara, I began, my voice shaking. Why did you? She looked at me, eyes wide, a practiced casualness on her face. Why did I what? She asked, smiling softly. The way you treated me just now, I stammered. In front of everyone, you laughed at me. Oh, Arav, she said, the words dripping with a strange mix of pity and detachment. I didn't mean it like that. They're my friends now. You know how it is. High school. It's always been high school, I whispered. But you promised you'd never leave me behind. You're supposed to be my person. She hesitated, biting her lip. Then she said it, and the words hit me like a fist to the chest. You're just not the kind of person people look up to, Arav. I can't stay stuck with you forever. There it was. The truth I had been avoiding, wrapped in a soft, smiling lie. She didn't stab me in the back. She didn't need to. She had already left, and she was smiling while doing it. I couldn't cry. Not then. My chest felt hollow, my stomach cold. I just nodded. The world spinning slowly, and walked away. The weeks that followed were a blur of emptiness. At school, Kiara floated through the halls like a star orbiting a planet I could no longer touch. She had her group of friends, her laughter, her applause, and me, I became invisible. Teachers glanced at me, but didn't call on me. Kids whispered behind their hands. I was boring, weird, that guy who still sits alone in the library. I tried to distract myself writing more, reading more, staying busy, but every time I saw her, every time I caught a glimpse of that same confident smile aimed at someone else, it cut deeper. I missed our pillow forts. I missed our walks home. I missed being the person she called her person. I still tried to be supportive. When she struggled with choreography, I offered advice. When she forgot lines during rehearsal, I reminded her. I stayed late, typing out cue cards, timing her pauses, editing her speech. Every bit of effort felt like a lifeline, a way to keep our friendship alive. And every time, she brushed me off, patting my shoulder with a soft, "Thanks, Arav. You're sweet, sweet." That's all I was. Not important, not needed, just sweet. The breaking point came during the final competition. Kiara stepped onto the stage like she owned the world. I watched from the wings, heart in my throat. She moved gracefully, perfectly timed, every word delivered with conviction. The crowd erupted into cheers as she took her bow, and then as she turned toward the audience, her audience. My chest tightened. I wasn't part of that audience anymore. I wasn't even backstage. I was invisible. And when the popular group started teasing me again, "Hey nerd, enjoying the show?" I wanted to shout, to tell her, "Look what you've done to me." But I couldn't, because she was laughing. I didn't speak to her for days. I walked the halls, quietly, head down, pretending nothing had changed. Friends asked why I looked so distant, but I couldn't answer. How do you explain that the person who meant the most to you, the one you trusted with every secret, had chosen everyone else over you? I spent nights staring at my ceiling, replaying every memory, pillow forts, mango trees, shared dreams, wondering where it had all gone wrong. The loneliness was suffocating, but more than that, there was anger simmering beneath it. Not rage at her, exactly, though part of me wanted to scream at her, but at the world, at the unfairness, at the fact that loyalty didn't guarantee love or attention. I realized something I didn't want to admit. I was mourning her, but not just her. I was mourning the version of myself who believed in forever. Slowly, I started to retreat. I stopped showing up to her rehearsals. I stopped waiting for her text to reply. I stopped hoping she'd remember me. I found solace in my own things. Writing became my sanctuary. I poured every bit of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak into words. Short stories, poems, tiny anecdotes, anything that reminded me that I still existed, that my feelings still mattered. I even started joining small clubs, trying new things, not for recognition, not to compete with her, but because I needed to feel something besides emptiness. And somewhere in that process, I discovered something profound. I didn't need Kiara's approval to be someone. I didn't need her smile or her attention to validate my worth. I was enough even if she couldn't see it. By the time the school year ended, I had built a quiet shield around myself. I still felt the sting of betrayal, the ache of being left behind, but I was learning to live with it, to grow with it, to channel it. Kiara continued to shine, her laughter echoing in every corridor, her popularity growing by the day. And me, I became someone who could watch her walk away, not with tears or pleading, but with a quiet understanding. Some people aren't meant to stay, no matter how much you love them. That day, I made a promise to myself. I would stop waiting for apologies. I would stop hoping for her to remember who I was. I would start building myself, not for anyone else, but for me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. High school ended as it always does, with a swirl of caps in the air and fake smiles that like people plastered over their relief at surviving another year. For most, it was a time of freedom, of dreaming aloud about college and parties and the best years of their lives. For me, it was quieter. I didn't shout, I didn't scheme, I didn't beg anyone to remember me. I just left. I left with my notebooks, my guitar, and a quiet determination to grow into someone I could be proud of. Not someone Kiara or anyone else would admire, but someone I would admire myself. College was a strange new world. The first few weeks, I felt like a ghost wandering among people who didn't know me. They laughed in ways that didn't include me. They grouped in ways I couldn't penetrate. And at first, I missed the echo of Kiara's laughter more than I wanted to admit. But slowly, I discovered that silence wasn't emptiness. Silence was space. Space to think, space to create, space to breathe without someone else's expectations pressing down on me. I started small. I carried my notebooks everywhere, scribbling ideas for stories during lectures, tapping melodies on the worn wooden desk with my fingers while everyone else jotted down notes about economics or calculus. I played my guitar in the corner of the dorm lounge, quietly. Softly at first, no one noticed, and maybe that was perfect. I didn't need anyone to notice, I just needed to be heard in my own way. Music and writing became my therapy. Every note I strummed, every line I typed, every poem I scribbled in my leather-bound notebook was a little piece of me that I'd lost when Kiara laughed at me, when I realized she had abandoned me for popularity. I never thought about revenge at first. Not really. I only thought about existing. About living without the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I poured every ounce of emotion into my craft, and slowly I started noticing something amazing. People responded. It began with small things. I posted a short story on a forum. Nothing fancy, just a quiet tale about loneliness and fleeting friendships. I expected no one to read it. The next morning, I woke up to 10 comments, then 20, then 50. People were saying things like, "This is exactly how I feel," or "I thought I was the only one who felt this way." I couldn't believe it. My words were connecting. People I had never met were seeing themselves in my stories. For the first time, I felt seen, not because Kiara had noticed me, but because strangers had. College life became a rhythm. Early mornings with coffee, afternoons buried in the library, evenings strumming guitar on the campus terrace while the sunset bled orange across the sky. I made a few friends, quiet ones who didn't demand attention but shared my love for books and music. They didn't care if I wasn't popular. They didn't care if I was awkward. They just listened, and in listening, I began to heal. Kiara lingered in my mind like a ghost though. Sometimes I'd scroll through social media and see her smiling with new friends, traveling, posing in pictures that seemed carefully curated for likes and admiration. She was growing, evolving, chasing her version of success, and I was growing too, but differently. It hurt, sometimes, that's honest. It hurt more than I wanted it to. But I kept telling myself, this wasn't a race. She hadn't taken me from my dreams. She just made me realize I needed to chase them on my own terms. Small victories began to pile up. A campus open mic night, I performed a few songs I had written. My hands shook, my voice wavered, but when I finished, there was applause. Not loud, not overwhelming, but sincere. A few students came up afterward and said things like, "Your lyrics, they just get it. Like, they get me." I started posting my work online more seriously. Short stories, poems, acoustic covers, raw recordings of songs I wrote at midnight. Slowly, followers trickled in. Hundreds became thousands. People were connecting with my words and melodies in ways I had never expected. My pain had become art, and art had become recognition. And I never sought her approval, not once. By the second year, things started to shift in ways I didn't anticipate. A story I wrote about, betrayal, written in quiet desperation one night, went viral. It wasn't flashy or exaggerated. It was simple, raw, and honest. Tens of thousands of people shared it. Comments flooded in. "This is exactly how my best friend betrayed me. I thought I was the only one who felt this way." You write what everyone feels but can't say. For the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. The power of my own voice. I didn't need to be seen by her. I didn't need to be recognized in the hallways of high school or by the popular crowd. I was heard. I was relevant. I was alive. During this time, I realized something profound. Solitude isn't loneliness. Solitude is freedom. Solitude is clarity. I could think, create, and grow without someone else's shadow blocking the sun. Kiara had been my sun once, and when she left, it felt like darkness. But in that darkness, I found my own light. I started performing at small cafes and college events. At first, I barely sold tickets. Sometimes only 2 or 3 people came. But I performed anyway, because the music mattered more than applause. And slowly, the crowds grew. People started recognizing me not as Kiara's old friend, not as the quiet kid from the past, but as Arav Sharma, the quiet artist who writes what everyone feels. Still, Kiara's ghost lingered. Memories of pillow forts, late night walks, and the way she used to call me her person would resurface at the oddest times. A song on the radio, a smell in the air, a laugh in the hallways. I'd pause, catch my breath, and remind myself, she had her life, I had mine, and that was okay. I stopped asking for her attention. I stopped longing for her approval. I stopped measuring my worth by her recognition. I realized that my value wasn't tied to her. My talent, my growth, my heart, these were mine, and mine alone. The twist of fate came unexpectedly. One evening, I received an email from a small online magazine I'd submitted a story to months ago. Subject line, "Your piece has gone viral." I opened it to see numbers I hadn't dared to imagine, hundreds of thousands of reads, shares, and comments. People all over the world were connecting with my words. One line in particular, "The ones who leave us are not taking us. They're showing us the way to ourselves," had gone viral on Twitter. It hit me then fully that I had done it. Not for revenge, not for anyone else, but for myself. Success was never about proving Kiara wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could rise, that I could shine quietly, fiercely, authentically. Life felt poetic now. I spent my days in a rhythm of creation, writing in the mornings, performing in the evenings, sharing work online late at night. Recognition trickled in, invitations to small festivals, collaborations with other artists, interviews with niche online publications. I was becoming known, not for loud popularity, but for sincerity and authenticity. People respected the quiet kid who had poured his pain into art. And every so often, I'd see a familiar face in my comment section. Someone recognizing my growth, mentioning the old stories. Some even said, "I remember when you were just the quiet guy who always helped everyone. Look at you now." And in those moments, I smiled because I remembered Kiara. Not with anger, not with longing, but with understanding. She had been part of my story, a chapter that had forced me to grow, to discover myself, to learn that being abandoned doesn't define you. What you do after does. The irony hit me hard one day. I opened my inbox to find an invitation from a local community event. "We would love for you to perform at our upcoming reunion show." And there it was, the signature I had never thought I'd see again. Kiara Meta, the Kiara who had laughed while abandoning me. The Kiara who had chased popularity while I stayed quiet, loyal, and unseen. The Kiara who had unknowingly pushed me toward the person I had become. Her name sat in my inbox like a challenge, a reminder, and a test all at once. I stared at it for minutes, my chest tightening with a mixture of curiosity, nostalgia, and something I couldn't quite name yet. This time, I wasn't the same kid who waited for her attention. This time, I had my own stage, my own audience, my own voice. And yet, a tiny, unavoidable part of me wondered, how would it feel to face her again? The answer wasn't clear. But one thing I knew, I was ready. Because the quiet kid who had once been abandoned had become someone who could stand alone and still be heard. The invitation had sat in my inbox for days before I even opened it. Kiara's name stared back at me, the sender of the reunion show request, as if daring me to respond. For a long moment, I didn't. My finger hovered over the keyboard, hesitation mingling with a strange sense of anticipation. I wasn't that kid anymore, the shy, hurt boy who followed her everywhere. I had my own stage now, my own audience, my own voice, and yet a tiny corner of my chest tightened at the thought of seeing her again. When I arrived at the venue that evening, the air was electric. Old classmates milled around, sipping on lukewarm drinks, laughing about years gone by. Posters of past events hung crookedly on the walls, the smell of coffee mixed with old carpet, faintly nostalgic, vaguely suffocating. I had performed in small cafes, online events, even college festivals, but nothing felt like this. Not because of the crowd, but because she was here, Kiara. She was standing by the entrance, hair the same wild curls, her smile bright, polished, but her eyes carried a quiet tension I hadn't noticed before. That effortless aura of invincibility I remembered had softened, replaced by something human, fragile. She was trying to hold on to the applause she once earned effortlessly, but now it felt like work. And me? I felt nothing but calm. I wasn't the kid she abandoned. I wasn't chasing validation. I was here because I had something to say, something to perform, something to release. The moment we locked eyes, everything from those years ago surfaced in a heartbeat. Pillow forts, mango trees, late night walks, laughter, betrayal. She smiled at me, small and nervous this time, as if unsure whether she deserved to see what I had become. I smiled back. It wasn't the familiar warmth of friendship. It was acknowledgement, respect, distance. The event coordinator gave me a nod. My turn. I walked onto the stage, guitar slung over my shoulder, notebook tucked in my back pocket. The chatter in the audience faded into silence as I cleared my throat. A hush fell. People knew my name now, recognized the quiet boy who had become a voice for the unseen. I didn't scan the crowd for Kiara immediately. I started reading. The poem I had written that morning had been waiting for the right stage, the right audience. Every word was deliberate, every pause intentional. It was about betrayal, about growing up, about losing people you thought were permanent, about learning to be enough for yourself. We were 10. I remember the sunlight catching your hair as you ran down the street, fearless, untouchable. We built forts of blankets and whispered dreams in the dark, thinking forever was ours to keep. But forever has an expiration date. Some people leave, not because they hate you, but because they need a crowd to hear their laughter. I watched you walk into the noise, and I stayed in the silence, and in that silence, I found me. The crowd was rapt. I didn't glance at Kiara yet. My words were meant for everyone, but I knew she would understand. I knew she would feel every line. You smiled while leaving, and it cut deeper than knives. Not because I needed your loyalty, but because I loved the version of you that existed before the applause. And I grieved for what was lost, for the girl who called me her person, for the trust that dissolved with laughter. I paused, letting the silence settle. The air felt heavy, pregnant with memory. Some people shifted in their seats. Some whispered to each other. I could hear the faint shuffle of Kiara's breath somewhere near the back. But I am here. I am still here. Not broken. Not waiting. Not begging for recognition. I am alive in my own words, my own music, my own light. When I finally lifted my gaze, Kiara was standing at the side of the room. Her polished smile had slipped. Her eyes glistened, a tear tracing down her cheek. She looked small, human, vulnerable. And for the first time in years, I felt no anger, no longing, no hurt. I felt calm. I continued, letting the words pour out, painting our history with honesty but never naming her. Some people say revenge tastes sweet. I say it's quiet. It's the life you built when they thought you'd crumble. It's the voice they ignored, now echoing in the hearts of strangers who see themselves in your words. It's not in laughter returned, it's in peace claimed. By the time I strummed the final chord on my guitar, the room erupted into a standing ovation. Hands clapped, voices cheered, some wiped their eyes. The sound wasn't for her. It wasn't for anyone. It was for me, for the quiet boy who had learned that being abandoned doesn't define you. I stepped off the stage and Kiara didn't approach. She didn't need to. She stood in the corner, silent, tears slipping down her cheeks. The apology she might have once fumbled now existed in her expression, quiet, wordless, unforced. I walked past her. My heart wasn't heavy. My chest didn't ache. I didn't look back. The years of waiting, of hoping, of grieving were over. I stepped outside into the night. The air was crisp, filled with distant laughter and faint music. I inhaled, filling my lungs with freedom. The city lights shimmered off wet pavement, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt like mine. I whispered to myself, soft enough that only I could hear, some goodbyes are quiet victories, and they are enough. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need her validation or anyone else's. The years of silence, of quiet growth had been my revenge. Not through malice, not through humiliation, but through becoming everything I was meant to be while she was still chasing applause. I walked away that night, leaving the reunion behind, leaving Kiara in the corner with her regrets, leaving the past where it belonged. And for the first time, I felt fully free. Forever had an expiration date, yes, but I had outgrown the need for it. All right, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.